We have voices, we write things down. Our thoughts, our histories, our grocery lists. These words connect us to the future. Someone 1,000 years from now could read this. They could know what we were thinking. But what if they couldn't? What if our alphabet was just a collection of meaningless shapes to them? This is the problem we face with the past. We have found messages. They are carved in stone, written on clay, painted on walls. They are the voices of entire civilizations, and we can't hear them. We have their pots, their buildings, their bones. We don't have their thoughts. The Rosetta Stone, found in 1799, was a miracle. It had the same text in three scripts: Greek, Demotic, and Egyptian hieroglyphs. Because we knew Greek, we could finally unlock the secrets of the pharaohs. Jean-Francois Champollion figured it out in 1822. It was like a key turning in a lock that had been rusted shut for 1,400 years. But for so many other languages, there is no key. There is no Rosetta Stone. There are just silent symbols on a rock, a piece of wood, or a clay disc. We look at them and see patterns. We see art, we see mystery, we don't see words. What epics are we missing? What warnings did they leave? Well, what was the name of their king, their god, their child? We just don't know. These are the stories of the codes and languages we have found, but have not yet understood. They are the loudest silences in human history. That's number 15. What were Europe's first writers trying to say? Before the pyramids, before Stonehenge, people in southeastern Europe were making strange marks on pottery. We call them the Vinca symbols. They come from the Vinca culture, a Neolithic society that thrived between about 5,700 and 4,500 BC. They lived in the Balkans and what is now Serbia, Romania, and Bulgaria. They were farmers. They built some of Europe's first large settlements, and they might have been the first people on Earth to invent writing. The symbols were first noticed in 1875 by the Hungarian archaeologist Zofia Torma. She found a collection of clay objects with these unknown signs at a site in Romania. But it was the Serbian archaeologist Miloje Vasic who really brought them to the world's attention. In 1908, he began excavating a large Vinca settlement near Belgrade called Vinca Belo Brdo. He found thousands of artifacts, many of them bearing these same mysterious symbols. The most famous example is the Tartaria tablets. These were discovered in 1961 in Romania by archaeologist Nicolae Vlasa. There are 3 of them. They are small, made of clay, and they are covered in symbols that look a lot like early writing from Mesopotamia, specifically Proto-Cuneiform from Sumer. This was a shock. Radiocarbon dating suggested the tablets were from around 5,300 BC. That's more than 1,000 years older than the earliest Sumerian writing. This discovery challenged the long-held belief that writing began in Mesopotamia. So is it writing? That's the big debate. The symbols are not random scratches. There is a clear set of them, maybe around 200 different signs. They appear on pottery, figurines, and other objects. Some scholars, like the prominent Lithuanian-American archaeologist Marija Gimbutas, were convinced it was a writing system. She called it Old European script and believed it was used for religious purposes. She thought it was a script used by a peaceful goddess-worshipping civilization before it was overrun by patriarchal horse-riding warriors from the steppes. But most linguists are skeptical. They have good reasons. First, the inscriptions are extremely short. Most are just a single symbol or a small group of symbols. Writing systems usually need to express complex sentences. We don't see that here. Second, the symbols appear on personal items and pottery. They don't seem to be used for the things early writing is usually for, like keeping track of taxes, recording history, or managing an economy. It's more likely, the skeptics say, that these are just owner's marks or religious symbols or potter's marks. They might mean this belongs to me, or this is for the grain god. That's information, but it isn't writing. Writing records spoken language. These symbols might not. The debate is fierce. Harald Harman, a German linguist, supports Gimbutas' view. He argues that the Vinca system is a genuine script, the oldest in the world. He believes it was used to convey religious concepts. Others, like the American scholar Shan Win, have created comprehensive catalogs of the symbols, showing they are used in structured ways, which suggests a system. But without longer texts or a bilingual key, it's impossible to prove. The symbols look like they should mean something. We see combs, animals, and abstract shapes like crosses and swastikas, but we can't read them. They remain silent. They are a ghost of a language, or perhaps just the first time humans tried to make marks that mattered. Tablets are hoax, as some have claimed, and they are clouding our judgment about the entire system. What if this isn't writing at all, but a complex system of magical symbols or family crests that we will never understand because we lack the cultural context? If it is writing, does that mean European civilization developed literacy on its own, long before anyone else, and then somehow forgot it for 2,000 years? And what would it mean if the first human sentence ever written wasn't about a king or a battle, but a prayer etched onto a small clay doll? Number 14. What secrets did the Minoans write down? On the island of Crete, a brilliant civilization rose and fell long before the glories of Athens. We call them the Minoans, named after the mythical King Minos and his labyrinth. They were Bronze Age people who flourished from about 2700 to 1450 BC. They built vast palaces like the one at Knossos. They were incredible artists and sailors. They created a culture that was vibrant and unique. And they wrote things down. The problem is, we can't read most of it. The man who discovered this lost world was a British archaeologist named Sir Arthur Evans. Starting in 1900, he began excavating the palace of Knossos. He unearthed a complex and beautiful civilization. And he also found thousands of clay tablets covered in writing. Evans was a brilliant but stubborn man. He realized he had found not one, but 3 distinct writing systems. He named them Cretan hieroglyphs, Linear A, and Linear B. Cretan hieroglyphs are the oldest, appearing around 2100 BC. They look a bit like Egyptian hieroglyphs, with pictures of cats, hands, and ships. But it's not the same language. It was mostly used on seals and clay documents. It seems to have been a very formal, perhaps religious script. Then came Linear A around 1800 BC. This script was simpler, more abstract. It was written in straight lines, hence the name Linear. It was the main script of the Minoan civilization for centuries. It was used for administrative and religious purposes. Finally, around 1450 BC, after the Minoans were likely conquered by the Mycenaeans from mainland Greece, Linear B appeared. For decades, all 3 scripts were a total mystery. Evans tried to decipher them his whole life and failed. He was convinced the underlying language was a unique, non-Greek language he called Minoan. After he died, a young British architect and amateur linguist named Michael Ventris took up the challenge. In 1952, he did the impossible. He deciphered Linear B. The world was stunned. He proved that Linear B was used to write a very early form of the Greek language. It was a massive breakthrough, and it gave everyone hope for Linear A. You see, many of the symbols in Linear A and Linear B are identical. The logical step was to apply the sound values from Linear B to the symbols in Linear A. If Ka in Linear B looks the same in Linear A, maybe it's also Ka. Researchers did this, and what they got was gibberish. It didn't match any known language. The word for total, which appears on many administrative tablets, might be Kro in Linear A, but what language is that from? Nobody knows. The underlying language of Linear A is not Greek. It is the lost language of the Minoans. So we are stuck. We have about 1,400 examples of Linear A, mostly on clay tablets. The texts are very short. Most of them are just lists. Wet, 50 units. Wine, 20 jars. 1 chariot. It's the bookkeeping of a lost civilization. We can guess the meaning of some words because of their context, but we can't read the language itself. And there are a few longer inscriptions, some on stone offering tables found in religious sites. These might be prayers or dedications. They are our best hope, but they are still too short. Theories about the Minoan language abound. Some think it could be related to Anatolian languages like Luwian from modern-day Turkey. Trade between Crete and Anatolia was common. Others suggest a link to Semitic languages. Still others believe it is a pre-Indo-European language isolate, a survivor from a time before Greek speakers arrived, with no living relatives. Without a new discovery like a Minoan Rosetta Stone, we may never know. The voice of King Minos remains silent, buried under the ruins of his own palace. What if the Minoans wrote down their entire mythology, the true story of the Minotaur and the Labyrinth, but it was all on perishable material like papyrus that has since rotted away? Could the language be related to Etruscan, another mysterious non-Indo-European language from the ancient Mediterranean? Is it possible that the sound values we've borrowed from Linear B are completely wrong for Linear A, and we've been on the wrong track for 70 years? Or what if the Minoan language was so strange, so different from any other language family, that even if we could pronounce it, we would never be able to understand its grammar and structure? Number 13. What does the most famous mystery disc in the world say? In 1908, an Italian archaeologist named Luigi Pernier was digging in the ruins of a Minoan palace at Phaistos on the island of Crete. In an underground storeroom, he found a flat, circular disc of fired clay. It was about 15 centimeters in diameter, and it was covered on both sides with a spiral of stamped symbols. This was the Phaistos disc. It has since become one of the most famous and baffling objects in archaeology. The disc is unique, nothing else like it has ever been found. It dates to the Minoan Bronze Age, probably around 1700 BC. What makes it so strange is how it was made. The symbols were not carved into the clay by hand. They were pressed into the wet clay with individual stamps or seals, one for each symbol. This makes the Phaistos disc the world's first known example of printing with movable type. It's a technology that wouldn't be reinvented for another 2,500 years. There are 241 symbols in total on the disc, arranged in groups separated by lines. These groups seem to form words. There are 45 different unique signs. We see a plumed head, a running man, a ship, a fish, a bird, and many other clear pictures. They are arranged in a spiral that runs from the outside edge to the center. The direction of reading is almost certainly from outside in, because the symbols sometimes overlap the ones that came before them. But what does it say? No one has a clue. The script is not Cretan hieroglyphs. It's not linear A. It is a complete one-off. Because the disc is the only example of this script ever found, we have no context. We have no other text to compare it to. This is the biggest problem in decipherment. You can't crack a code with only one message. This hasn't stopped people from trying. The Phaistos disc is a magnet for codebreakers, both professional and amateur. Dozens of decipherments have been published. The proposed languages range from Greek and Luwian to Basque, and a Semitic language. The proposed contents include a hymn to a goddess, a legal document, a calendar, a story, and even a magical curse. None of these claims have been accepted by mainstream scholars. There is simply no way to prove or disprove any of them. The mystery of its origin is just as deep. Was it made on Crete? The clay seems to be local. But the script is unknown there. Maybe it was brought from somewhere else. The symbols themselves offer clues. The plumed head looks like helmets worn by the Philistines, who are thought to have come from the Aegean region. The ship looks like a Minoan design. One symbol looks like a building that might be a palace design specific to Anatolia, modern Turkey. The evidence is contradictory. The scholar Yves Duhoux, in his 2000 book, How Not to Decipher the Phaistos Disc, laid out the immense challenges. The text is too short. The number of signs, 45, suggests it's a syllabary, where each symbol represents a syllable like ka, te, ro. An alphabet would have fewer signs, and a logographic system where each sign is a word would have many more. But that's just a good guess. We don't know the language, we don't know the context. Was it a game, a poem, a royal decree? The disc sits in the Heraklion Archaeological Museum in Crete behind glass. It taunts us. The precision of the stamps, the beautiful spiral layout, the clear images. It looks like it wants to be read, it feels important, and yet it has kept its secret for nearly 4,000 years. Could the Phaistos disc be a fake, an elaborate hoax created by a brilliant forger in the early 20th century to fool archaeologists? What if it's not a language at all, but a board game, with the symbols representing different moves or spaces? Is it possible that the disc was a unique experiment by a Minoan scribe who invented a new script for a single purpose, and it never caught on? Or is the disc the last surviving remnant of a whole library of texts written in this script, a library that was destroyed in one of the many fires that consumed the Minoan palaces? Number 12, is this Mesoamerican stone the key to a lost civilization? The Olmecs are a puzzle. They were the first major civilization in Mesoamerica, flourishing in the lowlands of south-central Mexico from about 1600 BC to 400 BC. They are famous for their colossal stone heads, massive sculptures of rulers that weigh many tons. They built ceremonial centers, played a ritual ball game, and likely invented the Mesoamerican calendar. They are the mother culture of the region, influencing the later Maya and Aztecs. But we don't know what they called themselves, we don't know what language they spoke, and until recently, we had no evidence that they could write. That all changed in 1999. The road builders in Veracruz, Mexico, were digging up gravel from an ancient mound. They found a large, flat slab of serpentine rock. It was covered in carvings. The archaeologists Maria del Carmen Rodriguez Martinez and Ponciano Ortiz Ceballos were called in to investigate. What they found was astonishing. The slab, which they named the Cascajal block, was covered with 62 signs or glyphs. Some were repeated. There were 28 unique signs in total. The block was dated to around 900 BC. This makes it the oldest writing ever discovered in the Americas, pushing back the date of literacy in the New World by several centuries. The symbols are unlike any other Mesoamerican script. We see a corncob, an insect, a fish, and various abstract shapes. They are arranged in horizontal rows. There are clear patterns and sequences. This isn't just a random collection of pictures. This looks like a writing system. A team of prominent Mesoamerican scholars, including Stephen D. Houston of Brown University and Michael D. Coe of Yale, published a paper in the journal Science in 2006. They argued that the Cascajal block was a true writing system. They pointed to the linear sequence of the signs, the repeated pairings of glyphs, and the overall patterns as evidence of a script that records language. They believe they have found the lost writing of the Olmecs, but the discovery is not without controversy. The block was found by construction workers, not in a controlled archaeological dig. This means its context is lost. We don't know what other artifacts it was associated with. We can't be absolutely sure of its date. Some critics, like the epigrapher David Stewart, have raised doubts. They suggest it might be a fake. Others think that even if it's real, it might not be a full writing system. It could be a set of religious or political symbols that don't represent a spoken language. The biggest problem, as with the Phaistos disc, is that it's the only one. There are no other examples of this script. We can't compare it to anything. We have a single block of stone with 62 symbols. It's like being asked to understand English with only one half of one page from a book. Where do you even begin? We don't know the language it represents. We can't even be sure of the reading direction. If it is real, the Cascajal block opens up a whole new window into the Olmec world. It means they were not a pre-literate society. They had a way to record their history, their beliefs, their rulers. But what did they say on this one stone we have? Is it a list of kings? A story of creation? A tax receipt? The symbols are silent. The mother culture of Mesoamerica wrote a message, and after 3,000 years we have found it. But we have no idea what it means. What if the block is a sacred text, and its strange, jumbled order is a deliberate attempt to hide its meaning from the uninitiated? Could the insect glyph represent a specific ruler or dynasty, and the whole text is a political history we can't access? Is it possible that there are hundreds more of these stones still buried under the Mexican jungle, waiting to be found? Or was writing a rare skill among the Olmecs, used by only a few priests for a very specific ritual, and the Cascajal block is the only example that was ever made to last? Number 11. Could knots in a string be a form of writing? When the Spanish conquered the Inca Empire in the 16th century, they were amazed. They had found a vast, sophisticated empire that stretched for 2,500 miles along the Andes Mountains. It had a complex government, a massive army, and an incredible system of roads. But it had one thing missing. It had no writing, at least not in the way the Spanish understood it. The Incas did have a way to record information. It was called the quipu, or quipu. A quipu is a device made of strings. There is one main cord, and dozens or even hundreds of smaller pendant cords hang from it. These pendant cords have knots tied in them. The type of knot: a simple overhand knot, a figure-8 knot, a long knot with multiple turns. The position of the knot on the string and the color of the string itself all held meaning. For a long time, scholars believed the quipus were just simple memory aids. The Spanish chroniclers said the Incas used them for accounting. They could record census data, the number of llamas in a herd, the amount of maize in a storehouse. The knots represented numbers in a decimal system. The position of the knot indicated its value: tens, hundreds, thousands. This was confirmed in the 1920s by the scholar L. Leland Locke. He proved that quipus were sophisticated calculators and data storage devices. But some researchers believe they were much more, they believed the quipus were a true three-dimensional writing system. They didn't just record numbers, they recorded stories, histories, and poems. This idea was first proposed by a few early chroniclers, but was dismissed for centuries. Now, it's making a comeback. The Harvard University archaeologist Gary Urton is a leading proponent of this theory. In his book, Signs of the Inca Quipu, he argues that the quipus contain a binary code similar to computer code. He suggests that the way a knot was tied S twist versus Z twist, the color of the string, and other details could encode up to 1,536 distinct information units. This is far more than is needed for just numbers. It's more than the number of signs in Sumerian cuneiform. Urton and his team are building a massive database of all the surviving quipus, about 600 of them. They are analyzing every detail of every knot and string, looking for patterns. They have found that some quipus from the same region seem to follow the same structural rules. They seem to be recording non-numerical information. They might be place names or personal names or even verbs. One tantalizing clue comes from a set of documents written in the 17th century by Spanish priests. These documents, known as the Naples documents, contain a quipu and a translation of what it's not to mean. It seems to record information about the local clans and their rituals. If this translation is correct, it could be the Rosetta Stone for the quipu. But the link between the documents and the quipu is still being debated. The idea of a writing system made of knots is hard for us to imagine. We are used to writing in 2 dimensions. On a flat surface, the quipu is tactile. It's 3-dimensional. It conveys information through touch and sight, through structure and color. If it is a writing system, it is unlike any other we know. The Incas managed a huge empire without a single piece of paper, without a single character carved in stone. They may have done it all with string. The problem is, the people who knew how to read them, the Quipucameocs or knot keepers, are long dead. Their knowledge died with them, the Spanish suppressed the use of quipus, and the tradition was lost. Could the colors of the strings represent not just categories of goods, but abstract concepts like war red or peace white? What if the longest, most complex quipu ever found, which has over 1,500 pendant chords, contains the entire Inca creation myth, and we just see it as a tangled mess of strings? Is it possible that a quipu could be read in different ways by different people, with one layer of meaning for the tax collector and another, more secret layer for the priest? And if we do finally crack the code, will we find that the Incas, a civilization we thought was purely practical, had a rich tradition of poetry and, literature all tied up in knots? Number 10. What did the people of the Indus Valley write about? Along the banks of the Indus River in what is now Pakistan and northwest India, one of the world's great early civilizations emerged. The Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization, flourished from about 2600 to 1900 BC. It was huge. It covered more territory than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. Its cities, like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, were marvels of urban planning, with grid-like streets, advanced water systems, and massive public buildings. They had standardized weights and measures, they had a sophisticated trade network, and they had a system of writing. We have about 4,000 examples of this script. It appears on small square seals made of soapstone, on pottery, and on a few other items. The inscriptions are very short. The average length is just 5 signs. The longest one, found on a large sign that might have been a kind of signboard, has 26 signs. The script itself is beautiful and complex. It consists of about 400 unique signs. Some are pictures of animals, like a unicorn-like creature that appears frequently. Others are pictures of people, tools, or plants. Many are abstract geometric shapes, and we cannot read a single word of it. The Indus script is one of the most significant undeciphered languages in the world. The failure to crack it is a huge barrier to understanding this amazing civilization. We know they were organized and technologically advanced, but we don't know who their kings were. We don't know what gods they worshipped. We don't know if they wrote laws or poems. Their entire mental world is a closed book. The challenges are immense. First, the inscriptions are too short. It's very difficult to find patterns in a text of just 5 characters. Second, we don't know what language the script represents. The Indus civilization disappeared around 1900 BC, and we don't know what language group its people belong to. A leading theory championed by the Finnish scholar Asko Parpola is that the language was an early form of Dravidian, a language family still spoken today in southern India. He has spent his life trying to prove this, matching signs to possible Dravidian words. For example, he suggests a sign showing a fish might also mean star, because the words for fish and star were similar in Proto-Dravidian. It's clever, but it's not proof. Another major problem is the lack of a bilingual text. There is no Harappan Rosetta Stone. The Indus people traded with Mesopotamia, but no seals with both Indus and cuneiform script have ever been found. There is even a debate about whether it's a writing system at all. A controversial paper published in 2004 by a team of researchers led by Steve Farmer argued that the Indus script is not a language-based writing system. They claim the signs are just a non-linguistic symbol system, like the symbols used in heraldry or the symbols you see on traffic signs. They point to the shortness of the inscriptions and the rarity of repeated signs as evidence. This view is not widely accepted. Most scholars in the field, like Parpola and the Indian epigrapher Iravatham Mahadevan, are convinced it is a true script. Mahadevan created a comprehensive concordance of the script, which is a vital tool for researchers. He believes the writing direction is from right to left, because the signs on the left side are often more cramped, as if the writer was running out of space. So we have the writing of a major world civilization, the keys to its society, and we are locked out. We have thousands of beautifully carved seals. They show powerful animals and mysterious rituals. They have writing on them. They were clearly important. They were probably used to mark ownership of goods. A merchant in Mohenjo-Daro would stamp his seal on a piece of clay to mark his jar of oil. But what did that seal say? Did it just say, "This is my oil," or did it say, "Property of Balin, son of Naren, blessed by the storm god"? We just don't know. Is the famous unicorn on the seals a mythical creature, or is it a profile view of a bull with two horns? What if the Indus script isn't one system, but several, with different signs used for religious, economic, and personal names? Could the key be hiding in plain sight in a collection of artifacts in a museum basement that has been mislabeled or overlooked? And what if the Farmer hypothesis is right, and we have spent a century trying to read a script that isn't a script at all, trying to hear a voice that was never there? Number 9. What language did the mysterious sea peoples write in? Around the 12th century BC, the Bronze Age world of the Eastern Mediterranean collapsed. Great empires fell, cities were burned, trade routes were shattered. The Egyptians called the invaders, who caused much of this chaos, the Sea Peoples. They were a confederation of tribes from the Aegean, Anatolia, and the Levant. And they left a trail of destruction. But they also left behind a language, or rather, a script, that we still can't read. It's called the Cypro-Minoan syllabary. The story starts on the island of Cyprus. Cyprus was a major hub of the Bronze Age world, rich in copper. It was a crossroads of cultures, with influences from Minoan Crete, Mycenaean Greece, Egypt, and the Near East. Sometime around 1550 BC, a new script appeared on the island. Arthur Evans, the excavator of Knossos, was the first to study it. He saw that it looked similar to the Minoan script Linear A, so he named it Cypro-Minoan. It seems to be a descendant of Linear A. A group of Minoans probably brought their script to Cyprus, and over time it evolved into a new system. It was used for about 500 years. We have about 250 inscriptions in Cypro-Minoan. They are found on clay tablets, pottery, and other objects. The texts are short, which is a familiar problem. Most are just a few characters long. The longest text, found on a clay tablet from the city of Nkomi, has about 400 signs. The problem is, even though it's related to Linear A, and even though a later script from Cyprus, the Cypriot syllabary, was deciphered in the 19th century and shown to write Greek, we can't crack Cypro-Minoan. The Cypriot syllabary was used centuries later. While it's descended from Cypro-Minoan, the sound values of the signs had changed too much. Applying the values from the later Greek script doesn't work. Applying the hypothetical values from Linear A doesn't work either. To make things more complicated, the French scholar Emilia Masson proposed in the 1970s that there wasn't just one Cypro-Minoan script, but at least 3. She called them CM1, CM2, and CM3. CM1 is the most common and is found all over Cyprus. CM2 is found on just a few large clay tablets from Nkomi. CM3 is found only at the city of Ugarit on the Syrian coast. Are these just regional variations of the same script, or are they used to write different languages? We don't know. The language behind the script is the real mystery. What were people on Cyprus speaking during the late Bronze Age? It was probably not Greek. Greek speakers arrived later. Some scholars, like Jean-Pierre Olivier, think it represents a native, pre-Greek language of Cyprus, which we now call Indo-Cypriot. Others suggest it could be a Semitic language, given the island's close ties to the Levant. Still others think it might be Hurrian, a language spoken in northern Mesopotamia and Syria. The city of Ugarit, where some of the script was found, had a large Hurrian population. The script itself is a syllabary with about 60 to 70 signs. We can see the structure. We can identify what look like words. We can see that it's a well-developed writing system, but we can't make it speak. It is the language of a cosmopolitan island at the height of its power and wealth. It is the language that was being used right at the time of the Great Collapse, the time of the Trojan War, and the mysterious Sea Peoples. It could hold first-hand accounts of this chaotic period, but for now, its secrets are safe. Could some of the text be written by the Sea Peoples themselves, a record from the very people who brought down the old empires? What if one of the three scripts writes a Semitic language and another writes an unknown Aegean language, and we've been trying to apply one key to three different locks? Is it possible that the underlying language has no known relatives at all, making decipherment nearly impossible without a bilingual text? Or could the key lie not on Cyprus, but in the ruins of a city in Turkey or Syria, on a yet-to-be-discovered tablet that lists Cypriot names next to names in a known language? Number 8. Who carved this message on a Bulgarian cliff face? In a remote area of the Rhodope Mountains in Bulgaria, near the village of Satovo, there is a rock shelter. Carved into the rock face is a mysterious inscription. It's about 3.4 meters long, and is made up of 2 lines of strange symbols. It's known as the Satovo inscription. Nobody knows who wrote it, when they wrote it, or what it says. The inscription was first discovered by a woodcutter in 1928. It was visited by the archaeologist Petar Datev, who made a copy of the signs. The location is hard to get to. It's on a cliff, exposed to the elements. Over the years, parts of the inscription have been damaged by weather and vandalism. This makes studying it even harder. The age of the inscription is a huge point of debate. Some scholars believe it is very old, possibly dating back to the 4th or 5th century BC. If so, it could be a message from the Thracians, the ancient people who lived in this region. The Thracians were known as fierce warriors, but they were also a sophisticated culture. We know very little about their language. We have a few glosses in Greek texts and some names, but that's about it. We don't have any long texts in the Thracian language. The Satovo inscription could be our only example. This is the theory favored by many Bulgarian scholars. Others have proposed completely different ideas. One theory is that the script is related to Phrygian, a language of ancient Anatolia. There are some visual similarities between the Satovo signs and letters of the Phrygian alphabet. Another theory connects it to the Celts, who also passed through this region. Still others have suggested it's related to Slavic runes or even Gothic script from a much later period. The problem is the lack of context. The inscription is completely isolated. There are no other archaeological finds right next to it that could help date it or identify the culture that made it. The symbols themselves are ambiguous. Some look a bit like letters from the Greek alphabet. Others are more abstract. Without more examples of the script, it's impossible to build a reliable picture of the writing system. In the 1990s, a team of Russian scientists led by Dr. A. Molchanov analyzed the inscription and claimed to have deciphered it. They said it was a Thracian text and read it as a dedication to a local god. Their translation was something like, "I, Balloon, have brought this to the temple of the eternal god." This decipherment has been almost universally rejected by other scholars. The methodology was not sound, and it relied on too many unproven assumptions about the Thracian language. So the inscription remains a mystery. It sits on its lonely cliff face, a silent message from an unknown past. Is it a border marker, a religious dedication, a funeral inscription, or is it just ancient graffiti? We look at the strange angular signs and we can feel their importance. Someone took the time and effort to carve these marks into a hard rock face in a remote location. They wanted this message to last, and it has, but its meaning is lost to the wind. Like, what if the inscription isn't ancient at all, but a modern fake carved by a local with a strange sense of humor? Could it be a message left by a group of travelers or merchants who were passing through the mountains, using a script from a land we haven't even considered? Is it possible the inscription is a star map or a calendar? and the symbols don't represent sounds but celestial objects or events? Or what if the erosion has so badly damaged the text that we are now trying to read a sentence with half the letters missing, making any attempt at decipherment a hopeless guess? Number 7. What secrets are hidden in this ancient Iranian script? Around 3100 BC, in the land we now call Iran, a civilization was on the rise. We call it the Elamite civilization. They lived to the east of the Sumerians in Mesopotamia. They were a powerful and important culture, and they were one of the first peoples on earth to develop writing, at almost the same time as their Sumerian neighbors. This first script is called Proto-Elamite. We have about 1,600 tablets inscribed with Proto-Elamite. They were mostly found at the ancient city of Susa. The script is beautiful and complex. It's partly pictographic, with signs that look like what they represent, but it also has many abstract symbols. There are hundreds of unique signs. For a long time, it was completely unreadable. We know what the tablets are about. They are administrative records. They are the accounts of a busy economy. They list numbers of people, quantities of grain, and herds of livestock. This is because the number system was deciphered in the early 20th century by the French scholar Vincent Scheil. We can read the numbers. We can see a picture of a sheep followed by the number 10. So we know the tablet is a receipt for 10 sheep, but we can't read the words. We don't know the name of the person who owned the sheep or the name of the official who recorded the transaction. In recent years, a major breakthrough has been made. In 2020, a French archaeologist named François Deysset and his team announced that they had made a significant decipherment of the script. Their work was based on a set of silver vessels from the 3rd millennium BC that had inscriptions in 2 scripts, standard Mesopotamian cuneiform, and a later linear version of the Elamite script that descended from Proto-Elamite. These vessels, known as the Gunagi vessels, were the key. They were like a Rosetta Stone. The cuneiform text could be read. It contained the names of rulers like Shilaha and the names of gods. Deysset and his team were able to match these names to the sequences of signs in the linear Elamite script. This allowed them to assign sound values to many of the signs. They could start to read the language. Deysset claims the language is a previously unknown language isolate, not related to Sumerian or Semitic languages. He and his team are now applying their findings to the older Proto-Elamite script. It's a slow and difficult process. The script's changed over time, but it's the most promising lead we have ever had. The work is still new and is being reviewed by other scholars. If it holds up, it will be one of the great decipherment stories of our time. Even if Deysset is right, it's not a complete solution. The texts are very formulaic. They are all about accounting. We still don't have any Proto-Elamite literature, history, or religious texts. The script was used for a few centuries and then disappeared, replaced by cuneiform. Why? Did they decide cuneiform was a better system, or were they conquered by people who brought a new script with them? Proto-Elamite offers a glimpse into one of the world's first literate societies, a world that was not Sumerian, not Egyptian, but something completely different. We are just now, after 5,000 years, beginning to hear its voice. Even with this breakthrough, are we sure the sound values remain the same from the later linear script back to the original Proto-Elamite? What if the language evolved so much that the old texts are still unreadable? Why did this civilization invent its own unique script, only to abandon it a few centuries later in favor of Mesopotamian cuneiform? Could there be a hidden trove of Proto-Elamite tablets buried under a forgotten city in Iran that contains not just receipts, but epics and myths that would rewrite the history of the ancient Near East? Number 6. What language is written on the La Mojara Stela? In 1986, a group of fishermen pulled a large stone slab from the Aquila River in the state of Veracruz, Mexico. The stone, known as La Mojara Stela I, was covered in carvings. On one side was a portrait of a ruler in an elaborate costume. On the other side was a long column of text, over 500 glyphs, and 2 dates from the Mesoamerican long count calendar. Those dates correspond to 143 AD and 156 AD. It was one of the most important archaeological finds in Mesoamerica in decades. The writing system on the stela is known as Isthmian or Epi-Olmec script. It's from the region between the old Olmec heartland and the rising Maya civilization. It seems to be a bridge between the two. The script is complex. It's a mix of signs that represent whole words and signs that represent syllables. It looks like a fully developed writing system capable of recording complex historical narratives. Two linguists, John Justison and Terence Kaufman, claimed in the 1990s that they had deciphered the script. They argued that the language behind the script was a form of pre-Proto-Zoquian, an ancestor of a language family still spoken in the region today. Their decipherment was based on a structural analysis of the text, and by comparing the signs to later scripts like Mayan. They produced a full translation of the La Mojarra Stela. According to them, it tells the story of a warrior king named Harvest Mountain Lord. It describes his rise to power, his battles, his rituals, and a solar eclipse. It's a rich and detailed story. It was hailed as a major breakthrough, but the celebration didn't last. Other Mesoamerican scholars like Stephen Houston and Michael Coe were highly critical. They argued that Justison and Kaufman's methods were flawed. The problem was that the La Mojarra Stela was the only long text in the script. They had nothing to test their decipherment against. It was like solving a crossword puzzle with no way to check the answers. Then a new piece of evidence turned up. A small stone artifact known as the Tuxtla Statuette, discovered in 1902, had a few Isthmian glyphs on it and a date of 162 AD. Justison and Kaufman's system seemed to work on this short text, but it wasn't enough to convince the critics. The real test would be a new long inscription, and then they found one. In the late 1990s, the Chiapa de Corzo Stela fragment was discovered. It was another long text in the Isthmian script. This was the moment of truth. If the Justison-Kaufman system could be used to read this new text and produce a coherent message, their decipherment would be proven. It failed. Their system did not work on the new text. The patterns they thought they had found in the La Mojarra Stela did not hold up. So, we are back to square one. The Isthmian script is undeciphered. The story of Harvest Mountain Lord is probably a fantasy. We have this long, beautiful text, a detailed history of a lost kingdom, and we cannot read it. It is a ghost story, a narrative we can see but not comprehend. It reminds us how fragile decipherment can be. A promising theory can be completely undone by one new discovery. The language of the Epi-Olmec people remains a mystery, locked away in the elegant symbols carved on a stone that lay at the bottom of a river for almost 2,000 years. Was the Justison-Kaufman decipherment a complete failure, or were parts of it correct, and we have thrown out the baby with the bathwater? What if the script was used to write several different languages, which is why a single system doesn't work on all the inscriptions? Could the carvers have made mistakes or used local slang? That makes a systematic decipherment impossible. And what other carved stones with these forgotten histories still lie on the riverbeds of Mexico waiting to be found? Number 5. What is the secret of the Singapore stone? In the early 19th century, at the mouth of the Singapore River, there was a large sandstone monolith. It was about 10 feet high and 10 feet wide. One face of it was covered with an inscription in a strange, unknown script. It was known to the local Malay people as the Singapore Stone. It was a landmark, but no one knew what it said or who had carved it. In 1819, Sir Stamford Raffles arrived and founded the modern city of Singapore. He saw the stone and was fascinated by it. He asked local scholars about it, but no one could read the script. He thought it might be ancient Sanskrit or Pali. He tried to get it deciphered but failed. The story of the stone ends in tragedy. In 1843, a British engineer, Captain D.H. Stevenson, was ordered to clear the mouth of the Singapore River to build a fort. He saw the ancient monolith as an obstruction, and so he blew it up with gunpowder. A few people who understood its value, like an officer named Colonel James Lowe, rushed to the scene. They managed to save a few fragments of the inscribed face. The rest was used as gravel for a road. Today, only one significant fragment survives. It is on display at the National Museum of Singapore. It's a piece of rock with about 50 characters on it. The script is angular and looks a bit like Kawi, an old script from Java or early Sumatran scripts. But it is not identical to any known writing system. The date of the inscription is also unknown. Guesses range from the 10th century to the 14th century. This was a time when the Kingdom of Singapore was a thriving port city. The inscription could be a message from one of its kings. Scholars have been trying to read this one fragment for almost 200 years. Sir Stamford Raffles thought it might be in an old form of the Tamil language. Others have suggested Sanskrit, Old Javanese, or an early form of Malay. The problem is obvious. The text is far too short and incomplete. We have a few dozen letters from a book of unknown length in an unknown script representing an unknown language. It's an impossible puzzle. The loss of the Singapore stone is one of the great tragedies of Southeast Asian archaeology. That one stone was likely the only example of this script in the world. It could have told us so much about the early history of Singapore, a history that is still very obscure. What was it? A law, a treaty, a memorial to a great leader, a curse on enemies? We will almost certainly never know. All we have is one broken piece of rock, a monument to a lost voice, and a testament to the destructive carelessness of colonialism. Could the language be one that has completely disappeared, leaving no modern descendants? What if the stone was not local, but was brought to Singapore on a ship from a distant, unknown kingdom as a gift or a warning? Is it possible that a rubbing or a drawing of the full inscription was made before it was destroyed, and that drawing is now lost in some forgotten archive in Britain? Or does the real tragedy lie in the fact that the inscription might have been easily readable to scholars just a few centuries before it was found, but by the 19th century that knowledge had been completely lost? Number 4. What is written in the book bound in mummy wrappings? In the 19th century, a Croatian official named Mihajlo Beric bought a female mummy from an antiques dealer in Egypt. He kept it as a curiosity. After his death, the mummy was donated to the State Museum in Zagreb, Croatia. For decades, it sat in a corner, mostly ignored. Then, in 1891, a German Egyptologist named Heinrich Brugsch was examining the mummy. He noticed something strange about the linen wrappings. They were covered in writing. But it wasn't Egyptian. It was a language he had never seen before. The text was Etruscan. The Etruscans were a mysterious and sophisticated people who lived in Italy before the Romans rose to power. They had a huge influence on Roman culture, but they were eventually conquered and assimilated. They had their own unique language. We can read the Etruscan alphabet because it's an adaptation of the Greek alphabet. We can pronounce the words, but we don't understand most of them. The Etruscan language is not related to Latin or any other Indo-European language. It seems to be a pre-Roman language isolate. The discovery on the mummy wrappings was incredible. The book, now known as the Liber Linteus Zagrebiensis, the Linen Book of Zagreb, is the longest existing text in the Etruscan language. It has about 1,200 words. Before it was found, all we had were very short funeral inscriptions, usually just giving the name and age of the deceased. The Liber Linteus was a whole book. So what does it say? It seems to be a ritual calendar. It lists dates and the gods that should be worshipped on those dates and the rituals that should be performed. We can understand parts of it. We can pick out the names of gods and the words for certain rituals. But we can't understand the fine details. The grammar is alien. Most of the vocabulary is unknown. It's like having a page from an English prayer book where you can read the words God, Jesus, and prayer, but all the other words are in a foreign language. You get the general idea, but the real meaning is lost. The biggest mystery is how a book from Etruria in Italy ended up as the mummy wrappings for a woman in Egypt. We don't know who the woman was. Was she Etruscan? Did she travel to Egypt and die there? Or was the book brought to Egypt as a valuable item and then sold as old linen when no one could read it anymore? The linen itself has been dated to around 250 BC, a time when the Etruscan language was dying out, being replaced by Latin. The Liber Linteus is our best and only window into the Etruscan mind. It shows us their religious world, their concept of time, their relationship with their gods. But it's a window made of frosted glass. We can see the shapes, but the details are blurry. Unless another long Etruscan text is found, perhaps a bilingual one with Latin, the full meaning of their language might be lost forever. They were the great rivals of early Rome. They taught the Romans much about engineering, religion, and art. But their own voice is now just a whisper from a linen shroud. Was the book a sacred text carried into exile by an Etruscan priest fleeing the Roman conquest of his homeland? Could the woman have been an Etruscan mercenary's wife who died in Egypt, and he wrapped her in the most precious text he owned? What if our interpretation of the book as a simple calendar is wrong, and it actually contains complex theological or philosophical ideas that we are completely missing because of our limited vocabulary? And is it possible that the Roman aristocrats who were fascinated by Etruscan culture translated some of their books into Latin, and those translations are now sitting unread in a library of ancient scrolls recovered from Herculaneum? Number 3 was this bizarre Hungarian codex, a hoax or a real language. In the early 19th century, a strange book appeared in Hungary. It was donated to the Hungarian Academy of Sciences in 1838 from the library of a Count Gustav Battiani. Nobody knows where the Count got it. The book, known as the Rohank Codex, is a complete enigma. It is 448 pages long, it is filled with text written in an unknown script, and it is illustrated with about 87 crude drawings. The drawings show scenes of battles, religious symbols like the cross and the crescent, and landscapes. The script is one of the strangest things about it. It has about 200 unique symbols. This is far more than an alphabet, but fewer than a logographic system like Chinese. It looks like a real writing system. The text flows from right to left. There are clear patterns and repeated sequences of symbols. It looks like someone sat down and wrote this whole book with a purpose. But what is it? That Hungarian scholars have been trying to figure it out for almost 200 years. The first theory was that it was an early form of the Hungarian language. But all attempts to match the symbols to Hungarian sounds have failed. Other theories have proposed that the language is Dacian, or even an early form of Hindi. None of these theories have any real evidence to support them. Then there is the theory that it is a hoax. Perhaps it was created in the 18th or 19th century by an antiquarian to fool his colleagues. The paper it's written on has been analyzed. It appears to be from the Venice region in the 16th century. So the book is old, but the writing could have been added later. The crude drawings don't look like typical medieval art. They are very strange. In recent years, two Romanian scholars, Viorica Enachuk and Attila Nieri, have claimed to have translated parts of the codex. Enachuk argued it was written in the vulgar Latin of Dacia. Nieri claimed it was a form of Sumerian. Both of their translations have been dismissed by the academic community as pseudoscience. The most serious modern research has been done by computer scientists. They have applied statistical analysis to the text. They have confirmed that it has the properties of a real language. The patterns of symbol repetition and frequency match what you would expect to see in a real text. It is not just random gibberish. This suggests it is either a real unknown language or it is what's called a hypertext, where a known language has been systematically replaced with symbols. If it's a cipher, it's a very good one. So we are left with a 448-page book from the 16th century, written in a script that has the structure of a real language, but that no one can read. The drawings show Christians and Muslims fighting. Is it a history of the wars between the Ottoman Empire and Hungary? Is it a religious text? Is it a personal journal? Or is it one of the most elaborate and successful hoaxes in history? The Rohank Codex is either a priceless historical document or a brilliant piece of nonsense. We don't know which. Could the Codex be the work of a lone eccentric scholar who invented his own language and writing system for his private use, a medieval J.R.R. Tolkien? What if it's a genuine religious text from a forgotten heretical sect, and the strange script was designed to keep their beliefs secret from the church? Is it possible that the book is a copy of a much older original, and the crude drawings are just a poor attempt to reproduce illustrations the copyist didn't understand? Or is the entire thing a code, and the key to unlocking it is hidden within the strange drawings themselves? Number 2. What is the secret of Easter Island's silent script? On a remote island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, the people of Rapa Nui carved giant stone statues, the Moai. Easter Island is a place of deep mystery, and one of its greatest mysteries is a script called Rongorongo. It is a beautiful and unique writing system, and it is completely undeciphered. The first European to report the script was a French missionary, Eugene Hérode, in 1864. He saw wooden tablets covered in strange hieroglyphs in the islanders' homes. By that time, the culture of Rapa Nui had been devastated. Disease, deforestation, and slave raids had reduced the population to a shadow of its former self. The knowledge of how to read Rongorongo was lost. The last elders who knew the script had died or been taken as slaves. Only about 24 objects with Rongorongo inscriptions survive today. Most are wooden tablets. Some are a chieftain's staff or a birdman statue. The script itself is made up of about 120 basic symbols. We see birds, fish, plants, and geometric shapes. It is written in a very unusual way called reverse Boustrophedon. You read a line from left to right, then you turn the tablet upside down and read the next line, also from left to right. What does it say? We have a few clues. In the 1870s, the Bishop of Tahiti, Florentine Etienne Jousin, met a Rapa Nui man who had some knowledge of the script. The man Mitoro Tawayure was able to chant from the tablets, but it seems he wasn't really reading them in the way we understand it. He was using the symbols as a memory aid to recite long chants. He would assign a different chant to the same symbol on different tablets. It was not a direct translation. The origin of the script is another puzzle. Did the people of Rapa Nui invent it on their own? This would be one of the very few times in human history that writing was invented from scratch. Or did they get the idea from Europeans? One theory is that they saw the Spanish sign a treaty of annexation in 1770 and were inspired by the act of writing. But some scholars, like the Russian linguist Irina Fedorova, believe the script is much older, based on an analysis of a tablet that contains a calendar that might be pre-European. The language behind the script is almost certainly Rapa Nui, the Polynesian language of the island. We know this language, it is still spoken today. This should make decipherment easier. But it hasn't. The problem is we don't know what kind of script it is. Is it a syllabary? Does each symbol represent a word? Or is it something else entirely? A system for recording genealogy, proverbs, or navigation charts that isn't a direct representation of speech. The German scholar Stephen Fischer claimed in the 1990s that he had deciphered a part of the script. He identified a recurring pattern on one tablet that he believed was a creation chant describing how a god copulated with a bird to create the first egg. His work was initially celebrated, but it has since been largely rejected by other experts in the field. They argue his methodology was flawed and his conclusions were based on too many assumptions. So Rongorongo remains silent. The elegant symbols carved with shark teeth onto pieces of driftwood are a message from a culture that almost vanished. They are the last will and testament of the people who raised the giant Moai. And we, their descendants in spirit, cannot read what they wrote. Was Rongorongo a script only for the elite? A secret knowledge held by a priestly class that was wiped out in the slave raids? Could the tablets contain the history of the island, the story of how the Moai were built, and why the society collapsed? What if the script is not meant to be read silently, but to be performed, with the symbols acting as cues for chants, songs, and dances? And is it possible that somewhere on the island, hidden in a secret cave, there is a Rosetta tablet with the same text in Rongorongo and another known script waiting to give the people of Rapa Nui their written history back? Number one, what is written in the world's most mysterious book? There is a book in the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library at Yale University. It is known as the Voynich manuscript. It is about 240 pages long. It is written in a beautiful, flowing script that no one has ever seen before. And it is filled with illustrations of plants that don't exist, strange astronomical charts, and naked women bathing in green liquid that flows through a bizarre plumbing system. It is the most mysterious book in the world. The book's history is patchy. It first appeared in the early 17th century at the court of the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II in Prague. He bought it for a large sum of money, believing it was the work of the 13th century English friar Roger Bacon. From there, it passed through a few hands until it was bought in 1912 by a Polish-American book dealer named Wilfred Voynich, which is where it gets its modern name. Everything about the manuscript is a puzzle. The vellum it's written on has been carbon dated to the early 15th century, between 1404 and 1438. The ink and paints are consistent with that period, so the physical object is a genuine medieval artifact. But the content is baffling. The script, known as Voyniches, is unique. It has about 25 to 30 different characters. It is written from left to right. The words are clearly separated by spaces. The text has all the statistical properties of a real language. The frequency of letters, the way they combine to form words, the entropy of the text, it all looks like a natural language. This was confirmed by studies from scholars like the physicist Marcello Montemurro. It does not seem to be random gibberish. The illustrations are just as strange. The book is divided into sections. The first is the herbal section, with drawings of plants. But botanists have been unable to identify most of them. They seem to be imaginary. The astronomical section has circular diagrams of suns, moons, and stars, arranged in patterns that don't match any known cosmology. The balneological section shows the strange scenes of women in pools and tubes. The pharmaceutical section shows parts of plants next to jars as if they are recipes. The last section is just solid text with no pictures. So what is it? There are three main theories. The first is that it is a cipher, It's a known language like Latin or German that has been encrypted using a complex code. The world's best codebreakers have tried to crack it. During World War II, a team led by William Friedman, the man who broke Japan's Purple Code, spent years on it and failed. They concluded it was not a simple substitution cipher. It must be something much more complex if it's a cipher at all. The second theory is that it is a real but unknown language. Perhaps it's a language from Asia that was written down using a newly invented alphabet. Or perhaps it's an extinct European language for which we have no other record. This would explain why it has the statistical properties of a language. But what language? And why would it be used to write a book about imaginary plants? The third theory is that it is a hoax. A very, very clever hoax. Someone in the 15th century created this book to sell to a rich and gullible patron. They invented a script that looked real. They drew pictures that looked scientific, but were actually nonsense. It was designed to look like a lost book of secret knowledge. If it's a hoax, it is the most brilliant and successful one ever created. The problem with this theory is the effort involved. It would have taken years to create such a long and internally consistent work of gibberish. In recent years, artificial intelligence has been used to analyze the text. Some AI researchers have claimed to have found patterns. One team in 2017 suggested the language was a form of anagrammed, unvoweled Hebrew. Another researcher, Gerard Cheshire, claimed in 2019 that it was a Proto-Romance language. Both of these claims have been widely disputed and are not accepted by most experts. The Voynich manuscript stubbornly refuses to give up its secrets. It is a book that we can see but not read. It is a perfect enigma. Was the author a brilliant, isolated genius who created his own world with its own language, flora, and cosmology? Could it be the work of a group of people, a secret society, who used the book to record their hidden beliefs? What if the book is not what it seems, and the key to understanding the text is to first understand the meaning of the bizarre illustrations? And is it possible that the Voynich manuscript is not a book of knowledge at all, but a work of art, a beautiful object whose meaning lies not in its words, but in its very unreadability, a perfect and perpetual mystery?